Welcome to monobiology. In this lesson we'll look at the female reproductive system. Before we get to the actual reproductive parts, I want to point a few things out about this picture. First of all, this is a side view of the female anatomy. It would be as if somebody had been cut in half this way, and this is the inner thigh here. So you'd be looking at the person from the side if they were cut in half. It's like a cross section. Kind of weird to think of it that way, but that's what you're looking at. Very important to note that the female reproductive system does not include the bladder or the urethra. This is the urethra, this is the bladder. They are not part of the reproductive system. And then back here, this is actually the anus, and obviously that's not part of the reproductive system. Okay, so it's this part in here that we'll be focusing on in this lesson. Alright, so the first one we're going to start with is the oviduct. The oviduct is located right here. Oops. Didn't want to change the color of that. Get that back. I do want to change the color of this though. Okay, so the oviduct starts here. Oviduct starts here and goes around like that. Okay, so that's the oviduct. Now, there would be two of them. Because this woman is cut in half, you can only see one of them. The other one will be on the other side, and that would be that. But because we can only see one of them, that would be the oviduct. Now, the ovary is actually the bean-shaped object that leads to the oviduct. Okay, so for more specifically, the ovary is in this area here. Okay, that's the ovary. The vagina. The vagina, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm supposed to be doing the definitions at the same time, aren't I? Okay, let's go back. The oviduct carries the egg, whether it's fertilized or not, from the ovary to the uterus. The ovary is the area where the eggs are produced and matured. Right, let's go on to the vagina now. The vagina is actually not the outer part. A lot of people think it's the outer part, but it's not. Technically, the vagina is the cavity where intercourse takes place, or if you prefer, it's also called the birth canal, so the baby comes out through there. But it's this area in here. This is the vagina. Okay, so I'm just going to undo that, get rid of that. But it's that area there. Okay? And like I said, the definition of it is where intercourse takes place. It's also the birth canal where the baby comes out. Uterus. The uterus is the opening, the cavity in this area here. Okay? So I'll move this out of the way for a second. I'll kind of color it in. The uterus is this area here. Okay? And the uterus is where embryo development takes place. It's where the baby develops. Now the endometrium is simply the uterine wall. The endometrium, I'm just going to just undo that for a sec. The endometrium is the uterine wall. Okay, so it's all this tissue in here. Not the cavity itself, but the outside where the wall is actually located. Now the endometrium is the uterine lining, the wall of the uterus, and it is what prepares for the development of a child. So during the menstrual cycle, the endometrium becomes thickened and eventually sheds, and that's what the monthly cycle is all about. Okay, so the endometrium is basically the part of the uterus where the baby becomes attached to and develops. All right, the cervix. The cervix is the opening between the vagina and the uterus. This area, oops. Go back, did it again, didn't mean to change color of that. Go back to my pen, and it's this area here. Okay, so the cervix is basically the opening between the vagina and the uterus. Now, during pregnancy, the cervix would be closed for the vast majority of the pregnancy. Now, when it's time to give birth, the cervix would start to open up. And in fact, if you have ever been around anybody who's pregnant or having a baby, they talk about they're 2 centimeters dilated. They're 5. It's the cervix that's actually dilating or opening, and that will eventually allow the baby to come out. But it's not a good idea for that cervix to be dilated before the baby's ready to come out. And so some of the hormones that are released during pregnancy cause the cervix to start to open during labor and childbirth. And we'll talk about those later. All right, so that in a nutshell is the various parts of the female reproductive system that we're going to be concerned with. There are lots of other parts, especially the outer parts of the reproductive system, but those are not important for our discussions here. So make sure you label this diagram, make sure you write your definitions down, and bring any questions you have to class.